Welcome back to Bazaar Morning Call. Hope you're having a relatively dry morning of trade. It's not so dry out here in Mumbai. Lots of flooding across several regions, so stay safe. But for now, lots of things to watch out for. Of course, Nigel and Prashant have spoken about that. But just to put into perspective, earnings season kicks off this week. So that's going to be the big trigger to watch for our markets. You have TCS and HCL Tech on Thursday and Friday. And the big question we're asking now is, are we at the end of the IT earnings downgrade cycle? And is that the reason why you're seeing a pickup in IT stocks? So that's going to be the big trigger. Of course, the union budget date is also out. It's the 23rd of July. And now we know that, you can expect something positive, maybe some populist measures as well, because there is a larger RBI dividend this time, stronger tax collections that may make it easier for the finance ministry to balance both the fisc as well as growth. So that's the big event to watch. Flows were mixed on Friday. So you had DIs selling, but FIs bought about 1,240 odd crores. And the monsoon progress is important to track. The latest we hear is that after over a month, finally India has turned into a surplus rainfall situation. India has now received rainfall 1% above normal, and only 6 states now face a rainfall deficit compared to 10 states earlier. So that's good to hear. But of course, the situation on the ground is still very tricky for citizens and, people who are commuting. But otherwise, monsoon progress is good. But let's do one thing. Let's also talk about individual stocks and get our entire research team to join us now. First up, I'm looking at Tata Motors this morning, because the numbers that they came out with in terms of JLR sales, Jaguar Land Rover sales, look pretty decent. So the Q1 wholesale numbers went up about 5%, but the retail sales data was a growth of around 9%. And if you look at the China JV, remove the China JV of the situation, the retail growth was actually 15% that Tata Motors has seen. Brokerages continue to be bullish on Tata Motors. JP Morgan has an overweight. They have a target price of 1,115. Macquarie has an outperform. They have a target price of 1171. Macquarie says that the product mix has surprised positively. So that's something that they like. So all in all, I'm going with green there. Okay, all right. Going with green on Tata Motors. But I'm focusing on Tata Steel, and they came out with their provisional update for the first quarter. So just to run you through the numbers, the India business did pretty okay. Best ever Q1 sales is what they have delivered. On a year-on-year basis, there was some growth. On a sequential basis, it was a bit of a degrowth because they had a bit of a maintenance shutdown. And also there's a seasonality factor that plays out. Netherlands operations, well, they have improved because that blast furnace has restarted. So both on a sequential basis and on a year-on-year basis, we did see some improvement out there. Well, on the UK business, it's more or less flattish, but they've mentioned that the operations at the blast furnace 5 at Port Talbot, well, that's been shut down on expected lines. But the reason I'm going with red is because suddenly there is some uncertainty post the UK elections. We have the new Labour government that's come in there, and we had a couple of MPs that said now they're working on a more favourable deal. More favourable deal, all probably will be for the labourers, not for the company. And, when we had the Conservative government that was there, they had agreed to a £500 million package. So is that in a bit of a soup? Is that going to be reworked? For the time being, the management says that they're in conversation with the new government as well. But that could be a bit of a niggling worry. So that's why going with a tinge of red on Tata Steel. But let's hop across to Mangalam. He's here to tell us about Titan as well as Dabur. Morning, Mangalam. Titan's numbers looked a little bit disappointing.
That's right. So the stock was down about 2% on Friday as well, ended at the lower end of the trading range on a day when Kalyan Jewellers actually did well after their update. But Titan, the domestic jewellery operations grew just 8%, and that's something which the street will not like. Akshaya Tritiya saw a double-digit growth, but there were high gold prices, lower wedding days, and weak sentiment overall impacting demand. That's not all. The buyer growth, this is a metric that Titan tracks very closely, that was in low single digits. So telling you that most of the growth came by on account of higher gold prices and not increased buyers. Studded growth too was moderately lower in comparison, impacting their margins, and that's likely to be lower than what the street is factoring in this time around. And there was no support coming in from other verticals as well. Eye care grew just 3%, the growth businesses grew just 4%, Carrot Lane too grew 18%, with watches and wearables growing about 15% itself. So see a deep red on Titan today. Importantly, just watch out for Dabur. Out there, the stock has been an outperformer ever since the budget was, ever since the election results were announced and the last quarter numbers. This quarter's a little better than that. They said that QOQ there was improvement in sentiment. Consolidated revenue growth for the company will grow in mid to high single digit, with India recording mid single digit volume growth. The main verticals of the company did a lot better, with operating profit likely to grow faster than revenue, indicating some sort of margin expansion. So see green on Dabur.
All right, Mangalam, thanks very much for that. More business updates. IndusInd Bank should be in focus as well. Abhishek has got details here. Abhishek, morning.
Morning, Prashant. So I'll begin with IndusInd Bank. Loan growth on a YOY basis is perhaps the weakest that you are seeing in last 9 quarters, and sequential loan growth is the weakest that you are seeing in 12 quarters. So deposits are up 14.8% YOY and 3.5% sequentially, which is better than the industry average of 12% YOY and a decline of 1.5% sequentially. CASA ratio is at 31 quarter low of 36.7% versus 39.9% in the same quarter last year and about 37.9% in the previous quarter. This is in line with the industry trend that CASA for all the banks is on a declining trend. Retail deposit is up 15.75% YOY and about 2.9% sequentially. Now the loan growth has come in at 15.5% YOY and about 1.4% sequentially. So YOY it's the weakest growth that you are seeing in last 9 quarters, and sequentially it's the weakest in 12 quarters. Credit deposit ratio that shrunk sharply by almost 200 basis point on a sequential basis. Talking about Bank of Baroda, weakest deposit and advances growth that you are seeing on a sequential basis in last 12 quarters. They have lost massive market share. Deposits are up just 8.8% YOY and they have declined by 1.6% sequentially. Now the advances growth is at just 8% YOY. Remember that the last fortnight data of RBI showed a 15.5% YOY growth in advances, and they have declined by 1.7% sequentially. Domestic retail book is up 20.9% YOY and 3.5% sequentially. Now credit deposit ratio that shrunk when compared to both YOY and quarter-on-quarter number as well. AU Small Finance Bank, there is a merger that had taken place, so the YOY numbers are not comparable. Deposits declined, and for the first time in many quarters you are seeing their cost of funds improve. So deposits have declined by 0.5% sequentially. Cost of funds have declined by 7 basis points on a sequential basis. AUM growth is at 3.5% sequentially. CASA ratio has improved for them, coming in at 33% versus 32% in the previous quarter. Back to you.
Okay, thanks a lot for that. Well, let's hop across to Mangalam now to talk about Marico and Nykaa. Mangalam, over to you.
Well, for Marico, it's no different from Dabur. It's actually improvement sequentially, and that's likely to reflect on the stock price today as well, where the domestic business posted a modest uptick in underlying volume growth. Parachute did well, low single-digit volume growth. Saffola oils, volumes have recovered out there as well to mid-single-digit. Value-added hair oils continue to be a bit of a pain point, but the company believes this will improve in the next quarter. Consolidated revenue as a result of which growing in high single-digit. More importantly, the company believes that going forward, both realizations and volumes are likely to pick up. And for Marico as well, operating profit grew higher than revenue, which implies margin improvement. For Nykaa, the beauty business did well, so the overall revenues will grow around 22 to 23% led by the beauty vertical, which saw revenue growth of a similar amount, up to around 22-23%. The problem is that the fashion industry continues to face challenges. So fashion revenue growth in the first quarter was around 20% with GMV at mid-teens, and this was supposed to be the growth driver for the company. So that not growing as well may have the street a little disappointed with Nykaa's update, even though the beauty business has done well. So mild red on Nykaa and green on Marico.
All right, Mangalam, thank you very much. Lots on your plate this morning. Info Edge is the other one we want to focus on. Rima is here to tell us why. Rima, morning.
Hi, good morning. So Info Edge has also come out with a Q1 update, largely in line with expectations. So the standalone billings have gone up by 10.8%. This is a pickup compared to the 5.5% recorded in the whole of last year. Recruitment billings continues to remain modest, 8.5% on a year-on-year basis in Q1. Real estate billings, though, have slowed down. In the prior quarter, in Q4, it was above 25%, but in this quarter, it's come in at 10.3%. But according to Nomura, these are largely in line. Standalone billings up 10.3%.
Okay, thanks a lot for that. Well, here's a quick recap in case you missed out on any stocks. Stocks with positive news flow, there's Tata Motors, Dabur, Marico, AU Small Finance Bank and Info Edge, while stocks with negative news flow, Tata Steel, Titan, IndusInd Bank, Nykaa and Bank of Baroda. Lots of stocks to chat about. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, Amrish Baliga will join in for some fundamental stock analysis. Stay tuned.